So, spanking, everybody's favorite form of child abuse. Now, I remember back in the day when they used to have, what's the word, uh, healing rape as something that is appropriate for women who are stepping out of bounds or for homosexuals. I remember back when the witches were hunted because they were evil and all that good stuff. And when I was in the US, I was at a Pizza Hut and I saw a young child, maybe five, maybe six, a girl, ask her father for ice cream at the Pizza Hut. And the father spanked the girl in public. And to somebody coming from a country where spanking is in legal terms the same as sexual abuse, you can imagine your reaction if you were at a Pizza Hut eating with your friend and somebody just suddenly pulled the pants down of that girl and started fucking them in the ass. That's how I felt. That's how I feel about your culture of spanking. Now, this whole topic of child abuse is a rather sizable, large topic. And occasionally, when you hear the, uh, let's say, left wing support things like criminalization of spanking, they at the same time support inundating children with sexual images, such as taking children to pride parades and so forth, which may not be the best option on the table. And it's hard to describe what it feels like to see that in reality, to see somebody spank their child when you have read the studies that show that not only does it not work, it in fact causes more violence than it removes. The only thing it does is that the report of those violences and misbehaviors no longer reach the parent because the child now knows that they have to be so violent that the person they are violent towards doesn't report it. In Finland, you could see in the 90s and early 2000s when I was growing up that the cultures in our little multicultural paradise that supported spanking and had hard parental values were always the most aggressive ones in school. And you could see that they were the ones who were the most violent in society. And now that we've gotten to a point where we have a larger number of immigrant and minority communities, we can see that the cultures that are strict but not violent towards their children are the ones where the violence is not reflected back upon the community. So you can see kind of this trend of violence not being repeated towards others in the community. Now, when I was in the US, I saw many things which to my mind were incomprehensible and they were violent in the extreme. It was like being in ancient Rome for a normal Westerner. You literally saw the slaves begging at the sides of the streets. It was really weird. And Europe is going in that direction pretty quickly. We're seeing that we are losing our grasp on humanity, if you will. And as bad as the violence situation in Europe is, and it's getting pretty bad, it's nothing compared to what you see in America. In the American culture, by and large, I'm not talking about the few minority groups of Americans who don't support violence, but by and large, everybody thinks it's a good idea to raise hard people. It is even the soft people who are raised in a way where people are violent towards them. When you have a normal disagreement, their reaction is always ultra violent. They don't know how to cope with disagreements and anger. They resort to violence, and it is pretty amazing to watch as somebody who's grown up in a community where the basic outline is to talk it out, where no matter what is the cause of the crisis, whether it is school bullying, whether it is parent child disagreements, whether it is anything even remotely resembling violence, the general answer is to talk it out. If you can't do it amongst the people involved, you might want to get something like a therapist involved and talk with them. But the general outline is to talk it out, that violence isn't permitted, it is not acceptable. And being confronted by living in that mindset and being confronted by the American mindset, where an adult can hit a small child in public and nobody as much as looks at them, thinks it is okay, is mind boggling. It is absolutely mortifying. The reality is that I was so close to beating that guy's head in that I cannot describe it. Were I not of the very large ability to control my emotions, I would have snapped. I would have literally taken a bottle and smashed his head in. It is, as I said, the same as seeing somebody rape a child in public. You would be pretty upset. But this leads back to the old sticker caker argument, where there are two clear factions of humanity which go by the common names of strict parents and free range parents, but those are still not good terms. I have not found good terms yet, though I'm looking for them. I have used the terms sticker and caker because they seem to represent the most morally repugnant aspect of the culture to the other side. One aspect of it is the cartoon smut, which is called cake. And the other aspect is the Bible quote, stick thine children or beat thine children, to loosely quote it. So picking a word or attitude from one group from the far fringes and then placing it against the other group's idea from the other far fringe seems to convey how wide a split there actually is. It is unbelievable to me to see childhood abuse of that nature, but that is nothing compared to the fact that some of these people openly support male genital mutilation. They literally say that removing 90% of the sense organ is a good choice. It is so repugnant that I cannot even have the words for it. It is akin to removing both the breasts of the women for the sake of preventing breast cancer. And in fact, removing both of the breasts of the women would be a better step towards health than removing what we are removing in male genital mutilation. But it is easy to sidestep these points when you live in Europe and go like, that's the American way of doing things. But you have to remember that they are literally beating and mutilating children in a large scale, and the culture thinks it's not only okay, but that doing opposite is wrong. So it translates into a societal structure that I want nothing to do with. I want nothing to do with the American social structure. I have experimented with it lightly a few times, and I have visited the US and seen what they are like, but I cannot get over the violence. It is everywhere and it is endemic. It is literally so bad that I feel I would be safer in Saudi Arabia. I mean, literally, I feel like I would be safer in Saudi Arabia than in the US. And that is very sad, but it reflects on politics in an interesting way. Because if you look at the healthy way of parenting, when two siblings fight with one another, they fight with one another. Neither of them has the position of authority. And while you can interject and intervene and call the situation in favor of one or the other, even at the worst case of siblings fighting one another, it is not a parent fighting a child. If you fight your child, are physically aggressive towards your child, there is no difference between that child and cancer. And they will strike back against you. They will find ways to demean you or destroy you. And looking at this debate in America, I'm starting to understand why, when I talk with my American friends online, near every single one of them says that they cannot wait for their parents to die. They literally wish it and say it loudly every single day. They wish their parents were dead. They have no love for them and they want them to die. Now, to me, that is very weird. I occasionally, in my darkest moments, wish that, but I am quickly overcome by love and common sense, and I wish that they live long, happy lives and that they are content with what they have done. And to me, it was first a little alien to listen to my American friends talk about wishing that their parents were dead so that they could finally, do something with the money they're hoarding, like, if nothing else, then buy cocaine and whores. And I'm just sitting there going like, why are you wanting your parents to die? Don't you realize they're an integral part of yourself? They are a key component of your physical structure, your psychological structure, not to even mention the other structures. But as I study and listen to what the American culture is actually like, I get it. I completely get it. If I had lived in the type of family that some of these, for example, the Jubilee Spectrum series, where they interview strict parents versus free range parents, and if I had lived in that type of American system, I am pretty sure I would also wish for my parents' death. I would not want anything to do with them. I would want a completely different system. But reality is that it's not just one small group of people who say this, it is virtually every group of youth in America that just wants their parents gone. They don't want anything to do with them. They consider them to be violent, maladjusted, tumors, perhaps is a word. They don't consider them human beings. They want nothing to do with them. There are the few outliers who, get together with the family and so on and so forth. But it is rare. It is, for the most part, that I have observed, they just want their parents dead. And it is mind boggling. But once you understand the kind of Bible thumper education that you're raised with in insufficient schools, in a collapsing society with no way to ever afford even basic health care, you know, out of the society, living like a monkey, you kind of sort of get it. And it's very sad. But the reality is that if you subject your children to violence, the children will wish death upon you. It is that simple. You needn't be violent more than once. For most people, once is enough. Once that trust has been shattered and the child treats the adult like an object of punishment instead of an object of love, they will learn how to manipulate that parent or those parents until they feel safe enough to move away. They will bottle up their emotions and not show them until it is safe to move away. It is conceivable that this violence towards children as a movement will end up being what actually kills America. Because when you didn't know that something is bad, when you didn't know that spanking, according to the studies, actually doesn't improve performance and actually just causes harm, when you didn't know that, it is still just the theory. You can experiment with it in the 30s, 40s, in the early parts of the last century. The studies weren't conclusive. You couldn't get good data. You just had to go on a hunch. That is different. When in the modern world you have the good data that kind of proves that it doesn't work, your only go to is that the Bible says so. And that is why more people are turning into Satanists, are turning wildly communist, because fuck that shit. Fuck that noise. So, in closing, when you go to America, be prepared to encounter the kinds of violence that you cannot imagine. Be understanding that you will be in a culture where male circumcision is the accepted norm, where punishment by beating is the accepted norm, and where 13-year-olds can get married if they get their parental approval or state approval. The kind of society that is paradoxical in how it treats the children and is run by, I hate to be a stereotype about this, but demons and criminals. If you imagine a society run by demons who want to uphold their physical form in a pleasurable way, you will get a very good idea of what the Americans are like. So that is about it. And I will probably get back to this at a later point. There are still a few other things I want to do now that I have broadcasting rights again, such as talk about schizophrenia a little bit, how we could switch the diagnostic criteria around a little bit and make a few minor changes, and then I would be content with seeing what diagnosis I get and doing possibly a gameplay of Madagascar to see how far we get with the economy. But if the question is supporting today's US against China or not supporting anyone in anybody's war against anyone, there is no question for me. I will not support a culture that not only supports child slavery, child physical abuse, child sexual abuse, child mutilation, but makes it near mandatory to do so. I will not support such a culture. You can take that for what it is. Thank you for watching.